I'm really allergic to horses. And fun fact, deer and horses have very similar, if not the same, dander. So I couldn't work with the deer. Also, if you're a woman, you can't work with female deer because they think you're also a deer and find you as competition and finding a hubby. Yeah, we toured a lot of film schools. So I ended up... Chicago! And then specifically for me, which is the reason why I chose FSU, is they asked me if I could be a sandwich. What type of sandwich would I be? I said I would be a Philly cheesesteak, by the way.
Did you have to say why?
Well, I was confused because I said, do you get this sandwich at Subway or something, or do I have to make it myself? You don't need to go to film school. I'm just happy I did because I don't think I would have been pushed to make the certain shorts that I did.
Honey, what exactly are you doing?
Don't all drains lead to the ocean?
No, baby, I don't think that's how this works.
Oh.
Today we are going to be talking about how I made my journey into filmmaking from starting out to also kind of... Actually, I wanted to be a vet originally as well as
yeah, you want to be in medicine. I think it's funny that Austin, your oldest brother, is actually a doctor, and you and I bailed on it, and we both ended up in film. Apparently, the medical field to film industry pipeline is a very real thing. I've been told this. Yeah, but it's funny. My brother is older than me. I have two older siblings, older sister and older brother. And my older brother, Austin, he was starting to get into what he wanted to do as a career first, obviously because he's older. And he took like a summer, was it a summer camp thing? He took it for VFX.
Yeah, but it was like a summer.
Yeah, your mom was really big on take a summer and try what you think you're interested in before you commit to college. And he was interested in effects because... that's what he saw. And my whole thing was don't do digital. Don't do practical, do digital because that's the future.
You just put yourself out of a job there, bud.
Yeah. So he took a class in Hollywood and he was really good, but it didn't really get him excited. And then the last class, they showed how you could use graphics in other arenas. And one was medical. And he's like, I think I want to be a virologist. Yeah. And it kind of went from there.
Yeah.
And you wanted to be in medical.
I wanted to be a veterinarian. Well, I was the kid, also ADHD as well. Everything that I wanted to do changed every 2 years.
Yeah, but I think that's normal when you're younger anyhow. It's
right.
This is cool. And then 2 weeks later, oh, this looks cool. It's what's
gonna
shiny
stick?
New thing?
Yeah, whereas... instead of it being 2 weeks inside tangenting something else, I at least had my mom, who was really gung-ho about actually trying it and seeing things. So when I was younger, I wanted to be, my parents, we grew up in the mountains. I was raised in the mountains. And so I really liked animals. I liked taking care of things. And so my mom suggested to volunteer for a wildlife rehabilitation center, which my sister had already been doing. So when I was old enough, I technically don't think I actually was old enough to be volunteering there yet, but I went and started doing that and realized I could only work with a certain amount of the animals because I was allergic to most animals. I'm really allergic to horses. And fun fact, deer and horses have very similar, if not the same, dander. So I couldn't work with the deer. Also, if you're a woman, you can't work with female deer because they think you're also a deer and find you as competition and finding a hubby. I was just dying in allergies a majority of the time I was there until we discovered the few animals I wasn't allergic to were bears, coyotes, and raccoons. So then I kind of tried to transition into doing more stuff for them in terms of painting old buildings that needed touch-ups and stuff and stencils on the ground that had little paw prints.
You're also doing graphic arts. You did t-shirts for their gift shop. And
their t-shirts were a little outdated for what they were selling in the gift shop. It was one of our bears who...
Well, you did the raccoon.
Had passed away, I think, at that point. And so, so I took photos for them and then we ended up putting it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And now they sell it in their gift shop.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So you were always interested in the art stuff.
Yeah.
And photography.
The creative stuff is already there. And so then I was like, oh, photography would be interesting.
Yeah.
And I love photography. And so my parents were awesome enough and kind enough to let me take a class that was like organized by National Geographic people, which was kind of insane.
It was just like a photography safari kind of
thing. I really enjoyed that class, and the mentors and teachers were really good. It was like a thing that you could do that was quick to figure out if you were really into it or not to keep doing it. But we would talk and critique our photographs and stuff. And just everybody else in the class like had amazing, like they could literally like snap a photo while their camera was just like sideways around their like arm, and it would look beautiful. And I was like, I feel like I had to try like 10 times harder because I just didn't have the quote unquote eye for it. And I was like, man, like this is cool. I like to do this, but I feel like I don't have that natural ability that makes it come easier. I don't think I have that photographer's eye.
Well, you have a cinematographer's eye.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to that because it's funny now having gone to film school, looking back at that. But so I said, well, you know what? I'm not that great at the photography side of it, but that part really interests me. I was really into watching Anthony Bourdain and
the travel shows.
Yeah, the Travel Channel show. And so I was like, I would really love to be able to travel the world for work. I think a lot of kids when they're younger have that same. I feel like everybody, like if you can go explore.
Sure, anything's possible. You can be an astronaut.
Yeah, exactly. So
go for it.
I thought, well, what about being a photojournalist? Because then you get to travel and to take photos, but it's also about the writing. So there was this like expo in LA that was put on like by the LA Times or something.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of like guest speakers who were photojournalists and writers or photographers or whatever. And there was this one guy who came in and had a book about how he had traveled from New York to LA with nothing else but the kindness of strangers. I was like, wow, this is cool. And that was like when I was starting high school and we were having more writing classes. It was the beginning of high school. And I'm not a very good writer in terms of it having to be structured in like essay format.
Well, I think it's, yeah. I thought you did fine.
I did. I mean, I got good grades and stuff, but it was hard and I didn't like it. And then that year, I believe was the year that I was diagnosed with ADHD. And then unbeknownst to all of us, I was also diagnosed with dyslexia later on in life. So I don't think a position as a full-time writer would be it for me in hindsight. And so this is all to lead up to growing up, you know, you kind of always, you don't want to be like your parents, so to speak. You want to forge your own thing. And so the only like knowledge I had of filmmaking though, up until that point, was really anything that was like at my dad's shop or when I would go on set and visit you. Mm-hmm. But my whole knowledge was just what was in the makeup trailer for the most part. And so I thought, okay, this is like one of the main jobs in film, not knowing that there's 5 bajillion other jobs in filmmaking.
Way above ours.
Yeah. And although makeup is a fun hobby of mine and I like it and it's definitely an interest, it's not something that I'm super passionate about like you are. And I'm not a good sculptor. But I think it was you who were like, you always make, if you have the opportunity in high school, you always make videos to like class projects instead of writing or like art. I remember you were like, don't knock it till you try it. You should at least try it. And I was like, I'm the privileged ass kid that's like, oh, my parents want me to take a film class over the summer. But like, I'm so glad that happened because what ended up happening was I took a summer class at USC.
And it was like a totally immersive experience. You had to go and you had to live on campus and be a student at 16, right?
Yes.
And you had a class and structure, but it was like a good experience. Again, your mom was really big on try what your interests are and see if you genuinely like them, get the bigger picture. have it be more immersive. So it's like, was it like 6 weeks?
Was it? I thought it was like 4. I don't remember how long the program was. I think it was at least 4.
Could be 1 month, could be 2 months.
3 months.
Could be
4 months.
I can see that happening, yes.
It could have been longer. It was like the majority of my summer. So it was kind of one of those film classes where it was introductory, but everybody got to write a short script, regardless if we filmed it or not. Oh, you know what? Actually, no. We all wrote a short film script and then shot them. So we were like in little groups, and this is kind of how actual film school goes when you actually do it at a college. We were in groups, and each person had their script that they wrote, and then the rest of the group helped them shoot it. And then we'd all come back to class and review it and talk about what could have been done better, what people liked, and what worked and what didn't. And then after that whole classes thing was then everybody wrote another short script, and then we all voted on which ones got filmed, and we filmed those ones on the back lot at Warner Brothers, which was really amazing and cool. And my script got chosen. I originally wrote like a love story, and then it somehow tangented into like this murder story. And I feel so bad for all the people who had to work on that, because they all wanted to be a part of this like cute little romantic story, and then it got shifted into
Went to the dark
this
side.
girl who murders people. That was really fun because you got to learn every side of it. You had to do the sound operating as well as the filming with the camera itself. And it was on like more rink-a-dink film equipment, or at least for the first short we shot. And then the next one was a little bit better stuff because we were at Warner. But you got to see a bit of every side of filmmaking. And I'm sure we had like history film class sessions as well, but I don't remember any of them. So when I directed my first short for the USC class for that summer, that was my first introduction into directing, and I was like, this is a job? Like, I can be the one that tells everybody what I want to happen, and I can work with actors. And so that was the thing, bringing it back to growing up in the makeup trailer, is that's one of my favorite places on set, to be honest, because you get time with the actors as themselves. There's like no guard up, so to speak, depending on who it is.
Yeah, but they're pretty much like not at work yet. They're getting ready for work, so it's easy to have a conversation.
Yeah, you get to know them and know who they are. And I really enjoy that process of it, which also comes into directing, because getting to know your actors as people, in addition to what they can do as an actor, I think is important. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, wait, you can like talk to actors for a living? That's awesome. Obviously, there's so much more that goes into that, and you're directing and the emotionality of it all. But that was like a whole new experience for me. And so I was like, I think I want to do directing, and it stuck. And it's funny because I always had thought, now having gone to film school, you know, I'd always thought, oh, somebody can frame this shot better than me. And
well, I think any artist always feels like things can be better.
Now that I'm a director, I can just say what I want, and the cinematographer does it. I don't have to be the one to do it, but I know what I want to see. I just don't physically know how to get that.
That's the best part of film school, is you get to try all the different departments.
Yes.
And even if you don't master them all, at least you have an understanding of what they all do. And you've been hands-on, so you can talk to that person easier because you understand what they're doing.
Yeah. And so it's funny because literally up until that summer, I had already toured a bunch of nursing schools.
Right.
Because when the whole photojournalist thing didn't happen, I was really good at bio in high school, and I really liked helping people, and the idea of working with people and helping them interests me. And so I volunteered at my local community hospital for a summer, and I was like, this is going to be fun. I'm in the hospital. It'll be great. No. I worked in the UCR or IC, not the ICU, obviously, but where the older residents who are like, have to stay at the hospital are.
Yeah.
And you can only be told you look like somebody's dead wife so many times before you start to go crazy. Don't get me wrong, I love playing bingo with the patients and all that jazz, but it just wasn't stimulating enough for me. It wasn't, I really needed something, I think, that wasn't behind a desk, and I was on my feet more, and not the same thing happened every day.
Right. Well, that's definitely film because it's
yes.
just chaos.
Yeah, it's just chaos all the time. So I'd actually like toured University of Pennsylvania. We did like a whole East, because my sister was going to UPenn at the time, and they have a really good nursing program. So that was actually my number one top choice for college was UPenn for nursing. And then once I discovered I wanted to go to filmmaking, we toured a lot of film schools. So I ended up Chicago. I think this episode is maybe more so for people who are also like maybe about to start college or
trying to figure out
in high school and
what you want to do.
Figuring it out. Yeah, because so we toured DePaul University in Chicago. And we toured NYU.
And then USC, you'd already been to.
I'd already been to USC. I went to like UCLA's little show and tell of what their film school was like. Right. I toured Chapman University and then as well as FSU. Not until a bit later though, because it was for my interview.
And FSU was Florida State.
Florida State. Yes, I'm wearing my shirt.
I know, I saw.
I know. Honor. To be candid and everything that I liked, Chapman's school seemed interesting, but all the California schools, it was like a little bit too close to home. I really wanted to be off and be independent. Although USC,
I think that's important.
Yeah.
To find your own identity and your own voice away from home.
Yes.
You know?
Who are you as an adult without your parents?
Yeah, and having your own, finding and using your own resources.
If you are privileged enough to have that. Be able to have that experience.
Those are definitely the advantages, in my opinion.
Yeah. And USC was my top choice because I had already experienced their film school and fallen in love with it, but I didn't get in.
Oh, don't cry, are you?
Which
I think is hilarious because you didn't get in, and then the films that you did in the summer class won all these awards and took you to film festivals.
I know.
Like in Cleveland and stuff. It was just so funny.
So funny. I know. And I graduated, for anybody who's listening to this and you're like in high school right now and you're taking every which AP class, every extracurricular, because that's what I was doing in high school. Like I thought all these things would add up. I graduated second in my class in high school. And I had a decent SAT score. It was a bit harder for me with the learning disabilities that I have. I still didn't get into a good amount of colleges with having a lot of those. I even, like, one of my letters of recommendation was from my teacher at USC and all these other things. So, like, don't stress yourself out on if you're not doing enough, I would say, because I did that and I feel like for what? You know?
I think you do the best you can and then you have to just go with the flow.
Yeah. So, like, really, if you're interested in art, like, in high school, pursue that to the fullest and obviously grades matter to an extent if you're trying to get into college, but like don't break yourself over it because that was what I was doing and it was really difficult.
Well, I always said, like, you don't go to the doctor and go, what was your grade point average when you were in high school? It's like, oh my God, my dentist was a D+ student.
No.
That's a conversation that never happened.
No, which is crazy, but some people do have the dentists that did get
I know.
D's get degrees.
But they passed. So.
Exactly, so it doesn't matter. Chapman's film school seemed very interesting, and I had a friend who had gone there, but I just think it was a little too like quaint for me.
I think you have to find what fits for you because everybody's different, and the dynamics of the place, all the places were different, and even the locations.
Yeah, like
the people that were running it had different, personalities as well as ways of being in charge.
Yeah, like Chicago.
There's a lot to weigh.
Yeah, like at DePaul, I really liked their dean and their school was really interesting, but their film school is separate from the actual college campus, which I found out later that a lot of colleges campuses are set up that way anyhow because film was a major that was added way later in the game. But So it was a lot of add-on to a lot of universities, but in Chicago, you like had to take a different train to a different part of school. And I was like, well, I don't know if that's going to work for me. And then their program at the time seemed more like television based rather than movies. And I'm kicking myself now, but at the time I was like, I don't want to work in television at all, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to do TV. And now I'm like, I would be so freaking honored to have a TV show because it's consistent work.
And TV's everything now.
It's everything now. Everything's streaming.
But you have to go with where your interests lie because you'll do your best work
Yeah.
that way.
And what brought me to FSU was really the people who were in charge of my interview. They interviewed maybe like 60 kids, and then from the 60, like 30 are chosen. And so we flew into Florida for my interview, and
it wasn't an interview.
It really wasn't an interview.
It was a whole different experience.
It was such a different experience from all the other film schools because they kind of go over what you had written for your essay to get into their program a bit. But like all of the questions were more like, if you were an animal, what would be your animal? And then specifically for me, which is the reason why I chose FSU, is they asked me if I could be a sandwich, what type of sandwich would I be? And I thought that was really awesome and just like really showcased their personality and being different.
But also too, they had you guys like dive in and do something in your interview. It's like,
did they?
There was a block of time where I took you to it, and I remember sitting in the lobby and they were making you like team up with groups of people and put together a project and present it. It was like a whole
thing.
Yeah, it was like a whole day's worth of stuff.
Yeah, they wanted to see how well you got along with other people and like were able to collaborate because that was such a huge.
Yeah, which I thought was really smart because film is literally 100% collaboration, you know?
Yeah. I said I would be a Philly cheesesteak, by the way.
Oh, okay.
For everybody at home who's curious.
Did you have to say why?
Well, I was confused because I said, do you get this sandwich at Subway or something, or do I have to make it myself? And I think they were caught off. I think that's probably actually why I got in, because they were caught off guard by my question to their question.
That's great.
I think they didn't know how to respond. So they were like, sure, you can get it at Subway. And so I panicked because I was like, oh my God, what's my favorite sandwich at Subway? And so I blurted out Philly cheesesteak, and then they followed up and were like, well, why? And I said, because I have relatives from Philly.
There you go.
Which is true. But they wanted the sandwich to be a metaphor for you.
Right.
And I didn't get it.
Well,
so.
You could say your metaphor was family.
I said, a Philly cheesesteak just seems like meat and cheese, but sometimes you can have onions and all this other stuff. So there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, and I tried to save it. But yeah, they had us like work together and stuff. And
Which I thought was really smart, because some of those people were talented, but they were not group.
No,
players.
It was an easy way to weed out the people who definitely aren't collaborators or people person right away. However, obviously there are people who would show it later that they're not really good. Although I don't really think there was anybody in my class. At least, everybody's kind of getting to learn the process the first go around when we did our first shorts at FSU. So obviously some people had differences in like letting things go and letting other people take over certain things. So I wouldn't hold that against anybody, but I don't think anybody really stuck through having that mindset throughout the whole program, which was cool.
I like the fact that it was a separate building, and it was, as a parent, it was secure, and there was a lock, and you could, because I know the hours are going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, they're making this effort to keep people protected. And then when you had your like 5-hour interview or whatever it was, I was just hanging out in the lobby, and there was this really cool lady that was cleaning the halls, and we just started talking. And she ended up showing me like a whole bunch of the rooms and like the.
Who was it?
I don't remember.
But
she was from Jamaica.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
She's super cool, and she showed me around everywhere, and I like was answering all the questions and showing me like the equipment checkout room, and she's like, and over here's where they have a wall with all the students' photos on it and their names so that they can get to know everybody. And it was like everything she was saying just sounded
So fun.
So great. And then I ended up seeing the equipment vans and all that. And they were like, you know, I think somebody else had joined us at that time. And they were explaining that the students had full access to all this equipment.
Oh, right.
And I was like, you don't get that anywhere. Literally, that's like,
yeah.
I have not seen that where you can just like grab a van that's fully loaded with everything you'll need and just drive off for the weekend and do something.
And it's already loaded. That's the thing too, because I think at NYU, like the thing was as well, you know, you had every college's film school, for the most part, depending on where you go, has the equipment room.
Yeah.
Which they call the ER, where you can check out your equipment. But for the most part, a lot of the stuff is already loaded onto vans that are for bachelor students and for master students. But obviously you can go in and check out more. But like at NYU, it's in a big skyscraper-esque building. And it's like, how the hell do you get that down and out of the building and all that stuff? It just seems like such a pain. It seemed like such a pain in the ass.
There's just more work.
Yeah, whereas Tallahassee is a bit different, but obviously everything has like a big pro and a con. Like in NYU, obviously all of your shorts that you can make can have these big New York, you know, settings that are amazing. Whereas in Tallahassee, you have a lot of more short films that come out that are, you know, they have the moss trees and all that stuff. Suburbs. And so that's kind of the more of the stuff that gets put out. So that's something to keep in mind of like what you tend to write maybe too is because you'll be in the location that you're filming at.
Unless you're on stage for everything.
Unless you're on stages, but FSU doesn't really, I mean, they have stages, but it's a bit, that whole process is a bit complicated. But yeah, so I really liked that as well. Part of the reason I didn't want to go to NYU, and I got waitlisted anyways, was because the city was your campus. And that was a little bit overwhelming to me at the time. Whereas FSU had its college campus. I really wanted the college campus experience. Although as soon as I got into the film program part of college, it was a separate building on like the outskirts of the campus. So I really wasn't too involved in it, but I at least had that experience my freshman year. And I could still go walk to it. It wasn't as crazy. And what my dad's saying about safety as well, I think if you're looking into film colleges as well is important to check out because you are going to be working crazy hours. There's been times where I have pulled all-nighters in my film school as well as left at like 4:30 in the morning and I'm walking to my car, which isn't too far away, but also as a woman is a bit scary. And FSU's college, the way it's set up is there's emergency lights every like 15 feet from each other that start at the end of where the film school doors are. So it really felt safe as well.
And I remember USC's like that too with those.
Yeah, or there's like services where you can call a van on your college campus to drive you to your car, or a security guard will come get you. So just
as an escort.
Yeah. But I think if you're somebody who's interested in going to film school right now, I'm trying to like think about what I would tell 15-year-old me. Really get into the nitty gritty when you're touring colleges or asking people. Like, I think that's something I wish I would have thought to ask is how are these students' films being funded? Where are the funds coming from? And who's in charge of setting that up? Is it a Kickstarter that the kids are doing? Are they individual, or is it a group thing? Is it student ran, or is it a professor or dean of some sort, associate dean, running it? Because that's really important in terms of when you go to do your thesis of how much money you can get to do it and how. Because I think that was just one of the biggest things. Like, I really loved my experience at FSU and I wouldn't have traded going to a different school for anything, but I think that was one of the biggest things that I didn't realize at the time, because I had seen other I really hope no one watches this and gets mad at me, but they know because I already talked about it to my dean. But like at Chapman, for instance, at the time at least, I had seen people were individually fundraising for their own projects and they could raise up to like $10,000 or $20,000 for their film. I don't know how much of that came from their film school that supported it, or it had to be entirely fundraised themselves. I don't know, but their budgets could be something around that, whereas FSU's were not. And you had
what was the ceiling for those?
I don't remember.
At the time, what was the ceiling?
Pretty much like $3,000.
Really?
Well, because they had us fundraise together as a class.
And then divide it up.
Which, to be honest, that was something that FSU had mentioned going into it, was that they wanted it to be an even playing field throughout all the students, which is what I actually really liked for the most part, because it was fair. It wasn't somebody could get this big donation from somebody, or somebody's mom and dad could pay for whatever, or
we would donate money to a pot.
And everybody could pull from it. And that's kind of how it was throughout all of our short films and stuff. And we'd have the same equipment, the same access to whatever, with certain rules applied here and there. But then when it came to the thesis, it just felt so silly to put it all in a pot and divide it evenly, because you had people who were writing super realistic high school stories that didn't require a lot of production design. And because we were film students, we could get these locations for a discount and all this stuff. So they were really paying for like high school facility use, and a lot of times we would cheat the college campus to look like a high school, which then we don't have to pay for anything. I think like a janitor to lock up or something. And then food, and not a lot of production design. And so there were these shows that didn't need a whole lot, which I'm glad that they had extra to allocate, or, you know, have better lunches for us and stuff. But then you had shows who were like trying to build whole worlds of like a space pod on a stage, and didn't have any money at all.
With
and
VFX and explosions
and it's like whatever. And regardless of them wanting it to be a fair playing field, it wasn't anyways, because those shows would put in their own money anyhow, because they had to, because that was the idea they really wanted to do. Same with me. Like, that was the idea I really wanted to do. Your thesis tends to be like your calling card when you get out into the industry of showing people what you can do. And so you're desperate and you want to be able to do the thing that you can do. And so a lot of people pitched in their own money to do their own projects. And I don't think that's necessarily fair in that instance, because had we been able to do individual Kickstarters, I think we could have all gotten a lot more money that we didn't need to pay for ourselves. But I do understand wanting that fairness between things. So had they had like a cap at like $8,000 per show, then great. And there was this whole conversation of, if a show didn't use all its money, could it donate it to the next show that was happening? And then they said no at some point. Yeah, because there was one show where it was like, we have like $200 left over that we didn't spend. Can we give it to the next show? And they're like, well, if you give it to them, you have to give it to everybody. And it's just like, fuck, dude, give it to that show that's next. Have them get the $200. It's fine, as long as somebody's getting more shit that they need. And so if you're going into college, I think that's like one of the biggest things to keep in mind, is how they fund things. And also the fact that it was student ran.
Also ownership. Who owns the finished product?
Right. Oh my gosh. Yes. That's another thing. When you're going to college, like a majority of the film schools will own your movies when you get out. A majority of the time it's for your safety and copyright, so that somebody else can't take it. Say if you put it up on YouTube and claim it as their own and change the credits and then submit it to film festivals or something. Other times it can be really problematic and hinder you in what you're trying to do with your film. But at the same time, there's always a workaround. There can always be a legal loophole. And that's coming from the kid who's, one of my student films was bought by NBC Universal when I was a sophomore. And there was like this whole debate because FSU technically owned my film. And so now Universal was like buying it from FSU and all this stuff. But there were lawyers involved. I wasn't on the phone for every conversation. But there are obviously loopholes because NBC
there's just
got it.
Workarounds for certain things in certain scenarios if people want to.
If you want to
make it happen.
Yes, so if you want to make it happen, you can, and that's really the bottom line. I can get more into depth of film school should anybody really want that information, but it was a good experience, and you know, you don't need, this is the other thing, like I'm sitting here talking about my college experience and this amazing privilege that I've been able to have, but I'm also sitting next to my dad who dropped out because he was already working.
Yeah.
So you don't need film school to have a career or successful career in film. I want everybody to keep that in mind. You can just like go get started right off the bat and try and PA for shows and stuff. But the advantage of film school, and the reason I'm grateful that I was in it was because I learned all these positions way quicker than I would have in the industry, so that I could really make sure that directing was what I wanted to be doing. Because there were other kids who came in and thought, oh, I want to be a producer. And then they ended up really loving cinematography or something. And they wouldn't have had that opportunity to find that, let alone with like really expensive gear and amazing cinematography teachers.
Yeah.
So it provides like a safety net as well when you make these short films, because you're not costing really anybody else money, although you're paying to be at college. Like, it's not like you had an investor come in and invest all this money in your film, and if it's not successful, you've let all these people down. It's like you're getting a chance to learn and fail within a safe setting where you're not kicking yourself, and you have answers. You have answers of like, why didn't this work in my film? Let's talk about it. Let's analyze it with people who are hopefully still in the industry or recently out of it. That's something to keep in mind too when you're going to college. Like, how long have your professors been out of the film industry? Because it changes year to year.
Yeah, I think with technical stuff, but I think people who are good writers, doesn't matter.
That's not going to go away. Yeah, it depends. Because like
But the technology keeps changing.
Yes.
And people have to stay on top of it. And some do and some don't.
Yeah, some teachers are really good about going back in and seeing what the industry is like and then coming back. You know, I think we had professors who were like working on something in New York at the time, and so they'd leave for a month and then come back, and so that was nice to have teachers who are still in it and wanted to teach us what was going on then and there.
Yeah.
But you don't need to go to film school. I'm just happy I did, because I don't think I would have been pushed to make the certain shorts that I did.
Honey, what exactly are you doing?
Don't all drains lead to the ocean?
No, baby, I don't think that's how this works.
Oh.
Without having that experience, as well as, you know, I made the short documentary on growing up with the Child's Play franchise, because my dad does the dolls for the Chucky movies, starting with Seed of Chucky, and that was the one that was bought by NBC Universal. And since then, I've expanded and made an entire feature-length documentary on it. But I've like made my first feature film, and I don't think that would have happened had I not even had a documentary semester, which most film schools don't offer, and FSU did.
True.
Which I think they're not doing it anymore now, which kind of makes me sad.
Really?
Yeah, but I don't know. I can't see. I have no idea. But anyways, that's kind of the gist of film school. And also you get to graduate with people who already know you and kind of know how you work, and you guys can like team up together depending on if you guys move to the same city afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really valuable. Like there's a whole bunch of FSU kids who moved to New York, who went to Atlanta, and who went to LA. And for the majority of the part, I see a lot of the same people still working together and helping each other, which is really nice.
Yeah, being very supportive. And with the world the way it is now, someone can do VFX for you in Atlanta while you're working here. And it's the only reason you know them is because you worked with them, you went to school with them, and you had a great relationship and you want to keep it going. I think that's one of the cool things about the college experience in general.
If you want to go to film school, and you have the privilege of being able to go to film school and you can afford it and you want to pursue it, I would definitely recommend it. But if it's not in the cards and it's something that you would put yourself into insane debt to be able to do, I would say maybe don't do it.
Yeah, go learn stuff online and by doing, you
Yeah.
know, or by hanging out around the people that are doing it, or go down some weird rabbit hole into makeup effects or something that supports it so that you can
still get into film, but a different avenue.
Yeah.
I do a lot of behind the scenes videography and photography. I have for my dad since I was young as well, and that's kind of a thing that has gotten me into the room with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And although I don't want to do camera work because I know how to film BTS, I've gotten a bit of jobs from that, and from there you meet people who will get you jobs on the next thing. So even if it's something that you don't want to do, maybe knowing that might be able to get you jobs down the road is something to pursue.
And it's all short term. I mean, commit for 2 weeks and learn something new and move on.
Exactly. And if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on the podcast, the YouTube video, I'm going to try and provide a few links of like where you can look to find PA gigs or like get into background acting and those websites as well, so that some of you guys have some resources that you can look at if you're completely lost.
Cool.
Yay! We did it. Thanks for coming to our talk, our TED Talk.
Yeah.
I hope some of you got something out of this in terms of.
I think listening to people's experiences is good.
Yeah. So that was my experience. And next time we're going to talk about my dad's experience on Return of the Living Dead.
100 years ago.
Yes.
See you then.